MVP Cody Ponce, another pitcher. They did lose their infielder Bo Bichette to the New York Mets. So they're down one Bo Bichette, but they're up several other players.
What about the other teams? Seattle Mariners came very close to contesting their first versus in football. Is the general feeling then, Kelly, that this is a good thing? This is a good advancement for baseball?
Well, it depends who you talk to, because very traditional fans are against it because they don't want to lose the human element. But I consider myself a pretty traditional fan, and sometimes you begrudgingly have to say, you know what? It's time for a change.
Well, that change has come then, and let's see what happens in this season. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us. Kelly Franco from the Baseball Podcast, the 3-inning fan show, with us on Sports World as the Major League Baseball season gets underway. And as I mentioned, the Dodgers, the defending champions, playing the Arizona Diamondbacks in the third game of that series a little later this Saturday. We're focusing on
doing all this to help the Iranians. And if the Americans, he didn't quite name the Americans, but if he said if sanctions are being eased, this essentially means helping your adversaries at a time of war.
Supporters of Nepal's deposed Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli have protested in the capital Kathmandu after he was arrested on Saturday. Demonstrators burnt tyres, blocked traffic and clashed with police. The Mexican Navy has confirmed that it has located 2 aid boats that went missing whilst on their way to Cuba. The vessels left over a week ago but lost communication with authorities for reasons that remain unclear. And Sudan's Prime Minister says Khartoum Airport is now open again for international flights after years of disruption caused by the civil war. Kamil Idris said aviation authorities had successfully concluded the phased reopening of Sudan's airspace. And now back to Lee James in Sports World.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, welcome back. We're going to focus on the end of the winter sports season now. Shortly, we'll hear from one of the standout performers from the Milan Cortina Games, Alana Myers-Taylor, who became the oldest ever winner of an individual Winter Olympic gold last month. First, let's focus on the winter sports action across the globe. The American skier Mikaela Shiffrin won a record-equalling 6th overall Women's World Cup title at the Alpine Ski World Cup Finals in Lillehammer earlier this week.
Shiffrin now going for the line, skiing for the big globe. For the 6th time in her career, Shiffrin's there. Another superb ski from Mikaela Shiffrin. P1 for the American.
Matt
able to stand on an Olympic podium.
Matt, thank you so much. Matt Cullen, Olympic commentator from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, with us on Sports World. children, but to do that whilst travelling to compete and enough isn't being done.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, especially within my own country, I am a very environmentally conscious person, and we have to start to do more things to make sure we, as a nation, are just taking care of the environment and making sure that we have green practices, making sure that we limit our greenhouse gases and these types of things.
beaucoup en avant le peuple.
He really highlighted ordinary people, the little people, in a place which, it's true, is actually quite exclusive and a lot of people have substantial means. He spoke a lot about the little people who have fewer resources.
So one voice there from Monaco, Nick, and it seems that messaging was having some sort of impact.
Thanks, Steph. Stephanie Prentice there. Now, 4 NASA astronauts in Florida are preparing for the mission of their lives. The first journey to the moon with a crew on board in more than 50 years. The Artemis 2 mission is going to see the astronauts loop around the moon, going further from the Earth than anyone has gone before. Victor Glover, Christina Koch and the Canadian Jeremy Hansen are expected to be in space for 10 days with their commander, Reed Wiseman, who spoke at a news conference at Cape Canaveral.
I think the nation and the world has been waiting a long time to do this again. And on behalf of myself, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, we are really pumped to go do this for this entire team. It has been a lot of work. It's been a great journey. It's great to be down here in the Florida warm air. The vehicle looked amazing on the pad on the way in.
His face looked very stern.
He's been stripped of the usual decorum that comes with being the heir to the Samsung empire, and now he is just like everybody else, facing trial in the greatest corruption scandal of South Korea's history.
J.Y. Lee is about to face prosecutors for yet more questioning. They've got 10 days to charge or release him. If J.Y. can avoid jail, his path to power will finally be clear. He will take over the South Korean tech giant. But if he's found guilty, his reign could be over before it's even begun. Everything rests on J.Y. holding his nerve. I'm Elise Hu. I lived and worked in Seoul, the South Korean capital, for nearly 4 years, covering this story. From the BBC World Service, this is Inheritance. The stories of the families behind some of the world's biggest companies. Our journalists have scoured the archives, combed through memoirs, and handpicked experienced observers to take you inside these dynasties. At times, we'll recreate, as faithfully as we can, the pivotal moments, all to understand how powerful empires are built and passed on. Season 1, Samsung. Episode 1 of 10, My Kingdom for a Horse. It's early 2016, a secluded woodland estate in southern Germany. Squeezing its way along the narrow lanes is a lorry containing an important
consequence to some, but to me, it was everything.
That's Martin Kelly, who was 11 years old at the time.
I couldn't believe it. My beloved Hull City were up against Georgie Best, Bobby Charlton and Dennis Law. That's like having Messi, Ronaldo and Mbappe in the same team.
It was a massive game, playing against Manchester United, who 2 years earlier had won the European Cup. The atmosphere was electrifying. I was there at the end of the tunnel, and when you're running out, in 70 at Hull City.
So 6 weeks after the FIFA decision, tied games could now be settled by a brand new dramatic climax.
It was a 7:30 kick-off. It was a lovely warm evening, but when I got into the ground, I didn't have a good view. I had to look between people's heads to be able to see anything, and I was really jealous of kids who had little stools to stand on. I remember seeing Bobby Charlton running up and down the wing. His face was really red.
Chris Chilton scored first after 11 minutes, and the crowd went bonkers.
Fans normally love it when the floodlights come on, but this time it was bad news because that's when, unfortunately, Dennis Law equalised.
We should have won the game. Ian Butler, one of our great players, blasted it over the bar. Well, as extra time drained away, we realised that we may be able to go into a penalty shootout.
We were going to witness something that never happened before. A football match was going to be decided by penalties.
Today we're familiar with the rules and rituals of a shootout, but for these players and fans, it was the first time, and no one knew what to expect.
Terry Neal obviously asked for volunteers.
Neal being Hull's new player manager.
And some of the lads were reluctant to step up and take the penalties, and some were brave enough to step up and say, yeah, I'll take one, and I'll take one. Nobody wants to be the one that misses. The first penalty taker for Manchester United was George Best.
Blimey, I thought. It's George Best, one of the greatest players ever, who's going to take the first penalty in the world's first penalty shoot.
In a penalty shootout.
Next up, it was Ken Wagstaff, my hero, and I knew we were going to win. He was going to score when we were going to beat Manchester United. And then, how could he do that? He missed!
The next penalty taker was Willie Morgan. He scored for United, and now it was sudden death.
What happened next in my book shouldn't have happened. Ian McKechnie, our goalkeeper, went up to take the kick.
I still maintain that
do not see
fingerprints on it. So we're in a situation here where Trump thinks he has a template for, if you will, regime change, although it's not really regime change, maybe just trying to get a more compliant government, but one that isn't going to work in Cuba for various reasons.
The question now is, what might those reasons be?
Part 4. Blockades and blackouts.
Changing the power structures in Cuba has something that the Republicans have been talking about for 60 years. And so finally feeling that they are close to doing that is something that would be a symbolic win for many of them after many, many decades of feeling frustrated by this small island that managed to survive without them.
When Trump cut off Venezuela's oil shipments to Cuba and threatened to put tariffs on any country that sold oil to the island, its antiquated power grid was strangled, causing blackouts. Fuel prices rocketed, and it now costs more than $300 to fill up a car's fuel tank. This is more than most Cubans earn in a year. Renata Segura is the Programme Director for Latin America
US Democrat administrations involved militarily in the past. With Trump, it seems he's found a willing partner to wage war against the Iranian regime.
Netanyahu has amazing access directly to the president. And I'm sure that makes a difference because, it wouldn't have happened under the Biden administration.
Over a political career stretching 4 decades, Netanyahu has polarised opinion.
I don't think it's an overstretch to say at all that he's managed to reshape Israel in his image in the last 20, 30 years that he's been in politics.
This is a man with exceptional capabilities.
Or Bibi, as his parents called him, was born in Israel. He spent a fair chunk of his adolescence in the US.
He was born in Tel Aviv, but then spent most of his childhood between Jerusalem and Philadelphia, which is where his father was teaching history. So not the usual kind of trajectory for a future national leader, I guess, to spend so much of your formative years in a different country.
His time spent in the US meant Netanyahu grew up bilingual and well-versed in American ways and customs, something that would stand him in great stead later in his career. The Economist's Israel correspondent and biographer Anshul Pfeffer.
Well, it was important certainly in the sense that he imbibed a lot of the American culture and many of the mannerisms of middle-class America of that generation. But him, it was very clear at the age of 18, even though he had been accepted to Yale, he made it quite clear that he would be returning to Israel.
In 1967, at the height of what in the West was the Summer of Love, Netanyahu moved back to Israel to do military service. He trained as a combat soldier, then joined Israel's equivalent of the British SAS, just like his elder brother had done 3 years earlier.